You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Testudo Times. I'm Brennan Weissel.
Sam Jane.
And Michael Howes.
And as Maryland sports transition from fall to winter, we skip ahead to the spring to talk some baseball. We sit down with Maryland's newest assistant, Brock KEENER. Brock, take it away.
Our next guest is the newest assistant of the Maryland baseball program, Brock KEENER. Brock, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to be here.
So we are recording this on October 24th. So Brock has only been with the program now for about 2 weeks, and very unusual circumstances and timing with when you joined the program. I know you told me that you thought the coaching carousel was over, but then there's an opening at Maryland. Kind of run us through how you found out that Maryland had an opening, and then when did you think that it would be a possibility that you could come be a Terp?
So I found out about the same time everybody else did when Kendall Rogers posted about it, right? That man is in the weeds of everything college baseball. So it kind of caught me off guard because, like I mentioned, I thought that the coaching carousel had come to a halt for the year. But saw the opening, I thought, okay, this would be a potential exciting opportunity. And then I had a couple people reach out to me to see if I was interested. And after saying yes a couple of times, the next phone call came from Coach Swope. And that's when it really started to get the ball rolling in my brain, like, okay, this could be a real possibility. And had a couple of conversations from there, and now we're here.
You know, you spent the last 3 seasons at Georgetown, kind of from the outside looking in, especially from a local team. What was the opinion and view of Maryland baseball before you joined the program?
Really good baseball team, very competitive, relentless ball club, and that dates back to not just Georgetown, but my playing days at Michigan. Coming here in 2017, them coming to our park in 2018, and then when I was at Army West Point, we played Maryland in a fall game, right? So I've been tied to the Terps as an opponent for a long time now, and you always knew it was going to be a hard ball game. You needed to take care of the baseball because if you give them any free outs, they're going to capitalize on it. Maryland made hitting's been a thing for a long time, right? And so overall, that's been the overall nature, in my opinion, of Maryland baseball is that you got a highly competitive ball club that you're going to have to play extremely well against if you want to beat them.
So for the past 6 or 7 years, you've kind of been on the outside looking in at Maryland baseball. Now for the past couple of weeks, you've been on the inside. What's something that surprised you that you couldn't have figured out when you were on the outside looking in?
You know, what surprised me is almost how loose in nature all the guys are. Because like I mentioned, in competition, when you're the opponent, it seems like it's all business, high intensity. But to see the personality, not only of the players, but of the coaching staff, and to realize, okay, that's a big factor into why there is success, not only on the field, but in terms of the day-to-day and the player development, all that. You can tell that the relationships are real and they're genuine, and it's not just one speed all the time, but more just picking and choosing and growing together. So that's been the most intriguing and the most exciting part for me so far.
You work with a coach who obviously his expertise is in hitting. That's something Matt Swope's been known about for a while. I'm interested to know a relationship between you and him when you come in. Is it more you're learning his ideas and then executing them in your vision, or are you guys kind of working in almost like, here's what I've learned and I want to bring this here? Like, how does that work with the relationship between you two?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think that there's one answer for this. And again, I've only been here 2 weeks, so we're still figuring it out. But one thing that really excited me, so Coach Swope, obviously, he does things a little bit differently, especially with the whole motor preferences and how he implements that within the individual player development. That's new to me. So learning that and understanding how that's implemented within a day-to-day and how that's implemented come game time has been new and been exciting. But on the flip side of that, what I realized in the interview process, which really excited me, is at the end of the day, he's still a baseball guy, and baseball's still baseball in the sense of you need to make good swing decisions. You need to be on time to hit the baseball, and we're ultimately just trying to score runs, right? And how we can go about that, we can do that in a multitude of ways, and that's my background. That's what my forte was at Georgetown as the hitting coach, was finding ways to generate offense and overall just maximize what we have. So learning how Coach Swope goes about it, as well as combining, okay, hey, maybe this is how you guys do it. Have you thought about it this way? And overall, just trying to work together and grow. It's been fun.
How much about motor preferences did you know before coming to Maryland? And then what, I guess, has surprised you the most about their usage of motor preferences here?
So I knew what motor preferences were. If I was in a conversation, you said the word motor preferences, I could go, I know that exists, and that was about it. And what's been cool about it is learning that it is a lot, but it's also you're learning it because it's so individualized for each person. Essentially, all you're trying to do is figure out how the athlete moves, and then okay, let's do that more often than not, and let's be really efficient and clean with that. So that's what's exciting. As somebody who didn't know what all goes into it, the only worry for me is that okay, we're trying to conform athletes to fit into one mold, but rather what I've learned is it's the exact opposite. It's more like we're just trying to learn the athlete and say, okay, hey, this is what naturally you do well already. Let's just do that great now. And that's what's been really cool.
I want to take it back to your personal baseball career. You grew up in Texas, you go to Michigan, you spend 2 seasons there. What went into the decision to become a student assistant coach?
So when I transferred from junior college to Michigan, there was a little fight for a couple of years with the academic department trying to get my junior college credits to transfer. And ultimately they transferred, but as blank credits, so not towards any major specifically. So I knew I was going to be doing a victory lap regardless. And it was at the end of my senior year. I was in Ann Arbor for the summer, and I was talking to one of my best buds, Michael Berdar, actually. He goes, well, why don't you ask Coach Backage if you can stick around for a year and just learn this side of baseball, if that's something that you're interested in. I was like, that sounds like a good idea. And I asked Coach Backage, and he was all for it, and he was awesome about it. And, I was just trying to set up the field and do what I could, but he just let me sit in on the meetings. And I've tried to find a good way to say this because I've said this to some other people, and I don't think I've been able to, but it was great for me because I got to be the sausage as the player, but then I got to see how the sausage was made for a year, right? And that's where I really found the new love for the game. Like just finding players that have way more athletic ability than me, way more baseball intuition, but finding ways to help maximize their potential and get them onto the next level. That was truly awesome to be a part of for that year, and just kind of took it from there. So I'm very grateful that Michigan didn't accept my junior college credits.
How have you you've worked with some good players? I mean, blanking on his the lefty starter for Michigan, Tommy
Henry.
Tommy Henry. Michigan had some good players in that run. Obviously, Georgetown as well. Who's somebody on Maryland's team that you're really looking forward to working with this upcoming year?
Hollis Porter. He reminds me of myself some in the sense of he went to Division I school out of high school, then bet on himself and went to junior college because he knew he wanted a different opportunity. That's my story to a T. And just being around him for the last couple of weeks, just his desire and passion to be great, and it's outstanding. And he just loves the game of baseball. And we're both new together, right? I'm picking his brain just because he's been here 2 weeks longer than me. But we both have a similar background from that regard, and we're learning this together. But at the end of the day, it's still baseball, and to see his compete and his desire to be great, not only for himself, but he's all about the Terps. As somebody from Mississippi, picking his brain, and first thing he told me was like, "Coach, I love it here." Like I didn't think, I was really worried, but I love it here. I love what we do. I love how we do it, and it's just awesome to be around him, and as well as abundance of guys. But that's probably Hollis Porter. Excited.
I wanted to ask about the new practice facility being built right now. Kind of what is the excitement in the program for when that is completed? I believe it should be done by the start of the season. And then just how is that just going to advance and just make everything so much more better in the player development realm for you guys?
It's going to be so awesome because there's already so much development taking place and maximizing the resources we have currently, right? And it's obviously working over not just the last couple of weeks, but over the last decade, right? So now to just have more resources for the players, because they have a desire, like I mentioned about Hollis, they all want to be great. They all have outstanding work ethics and are very disciplined to be focused on what they need to be working on. Which has been very apparent since I've joined here a couple weeks ago. So now having a place that they can call their own for go in at any hour of the day, any hour of the night, and just have really specialized training to what they need as the individual athlete, man, the sky's the limit. It's going to be great.
You mentioned how the year at Michigan kind of jump started your coaching career. What's the long-term outlook for you? We're sitting here obviously in 2024 and you just joined the Maryland staff. Would you like to be a head coach someday? What's kind of on your mind looking way in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think being a head coach one day would be cool, but right now I'm really just trying to dominate with the Terps. Like I try and be really good about being where my feet are, and I'm blessed to be here. This is an amazing opportunity that Coach Swope has provided me, and I think that I'm a big believer in as long as I take care of business in the moment and just really embrace where I'm at and what I'm doing and being fully engaged with the people I'm around, the future's going to take care of itself. Like I never would have imagined back in 2017 when I came here as a player sitting in the bullpen all week and warming up the pitchers that I'd be here as a coach one day, right? I just knew that I wanted to be in baseball and every year just tried to work to stay in baseball. So I don't know what the future holds, if I'm a head coach, an assistant for life, whatever the case may be. I just know that I want to win at a very high level, and that being here in Maryland allows that. And that's what's really exciting, and we'll see where it goes from here.
See where it goes from here, and a couple more months till the baseball season starts in February. Coach Brock, really appreciate you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate y'all. You have a good one.
And that was a great interview with the newest member of the Terps coaching staff, Brock KEENER. We've actually had some recent baseball action at the Bob on campus recently. Saturday, the Terps hosted Georgetown for 2 fall games, 1 9-inning, 1 7-inning, and game 1 had quite the finish. The Terps won 11-8 off a walk-off 3-run home run by Alex Calarco. The Terps did end up losing game 2 11-4, but Terps offense looks like it's humming early this fall, and they have an exciting group of pitchers, another rebuilt pitching staff for the Terps this upcoming season. So should be interesting. Spring is right around the corner. Not really. It's a couple months away, but we do have a lot to talk about this episode. Notably, the football team. We actually had boots on the ground in Minneapolis this past weekend. Sam Jane was there covering it for the Diamondback. Sam, what did you see?
I saw something. I don't know really what it was. Guys, I think, can we say that was safe to say probably the worst, at least maybe not game, but worst start to a game under Mike Loxley, considering the circumstances after the big win, falling down 21-0. That was the first quarter. Just, it felt like all the momentum they had garnered from the USC win was zapped, like within 15 minutes. It was really bad. Billy Edwards threw 2 interceptions, one of which Loxley just said he immediately was like, oh no, what are we doing? He threw into a kind of clever cloud zone. They were playing cover 2, and he expected Shalik Knotts, I think, to just sit down. He didn't, and it was a pick. And that kind of just started the whole downward trend. I mean, Maryland never really recovered, losing by 25 points. Just a really, I think, almost... it brought back the reality, I think, of what this team is, okay? Like, we talked a lot after the USC game. We gave Maryland their praise. They won a big game. But, Brendan, you mentioned that at the same time, USC more lost that game than Maryland won it, and it was almost somewhat of a mirage. I think Saturday really showed, and before we kind of get into the deep dive of the stats and everything, how much do you think that this game is a reality check almost for this season and maybe, I don't want to say program, but for what this year has been like?
It's definitely one of the worst first quarters under Mike Loxley. To go back to what you were saying at the beginning, was it the worst start? No. Michigan game from 2 years ago, at least the kickoff wasn't fumbled. At least Maryland got a chance. However, that first drive that Maryland had, they went for it and didn't get it and didn't use the turtle push. Tons of questions. It's a total reality check, but it's pretty much what we knew, right? The USC game, they were able to pull off the upset. But then, we knew this team is not really built to play with other teams in the Big Ten. They just don't have the rushing attack. They don't have the offensive line and the defensive line to compete in the Big Ten at this moment in time. And that's what we knew after the Michigan State game. And, the USC game, they were able to find a way to win, but you go down 24-0 and, this team is not going to ever do that. This team will never come back from down 24-0 with the current roster.
It was definitely a reality check. The USC game, you make a million mistakes, the other team makes just as many mistakes, allows you to get back into that game and win it. That's not going to happen every game. That did not happen against Minnesota. If not for a blocked field goal, we'd be talking about how little Maryland's chances of having a bowl game is at this point. Right now, they have to go 2-2 to get 6-6 to make a bowl game. If they didn't block that field goal against USC, we would be talking about them having to take a game against Oregon, them having to take a game against Penn State. They were very fortunate to win that game, but also now looking at the season ahead, it just does not look good for them.
I don't think it's even like it feels like a stretch to say this team's going to win 2 more games, right? Like, you're playing a 4-game stretch. I know Rutgers and Iowa have struggled, but not bad teams. And it's not even about that. It's more just this team is not consistent enough to put together, 2 performances, I think, that'll be good enough to win 2 Big Ten games. And I think what the crazy thing is if you looked at the stats, guys, I'm going to read some stats from you from Saturday. So I'm not going to tell you which one. 428 to 443 offensive yards, 2 turnovers to 0, but you had 323 to 320 passing yards, 105 rushing yards to 123 rushing yards. That was pretty even statistically, right? But I think the big difference when you look at it, there were 2 main factors. 1, third downs. Maryland only converted 6 of their 14 third downs. Minnesota was 9 of 13. And 2, I thought it was pressure. Max Brosmer, Minnesota's quarterback, had enough time to listen to an entire Under the Shell episode, one of our lengthiest probably, make a mac and cheese, and serve it before he was even remotely close to being pressured. The Maryland pass rush was so bad on Saturday. Minnesota had all day to throw. Daniel Jackson, their leading receiver, found himself, guys, it felt like he was wide open every play. Meanwhile, on the other side, Edwards was pressured consistently. The second interception he threw, I was wrong. The left guard was right in his lap. He faced, he got quarterback hit, I think, 5 or 6 times, but it felt way more than that. He's not playing at 100%. How could he be? He's banged up. He's been hit all year. I think those 2 factors really, and the passing defense, guys, eventually, it is what it is, right? Loxley could say, oh, I need these guys to be consistent. They're getting better. They're young, all this type of stuff. But they've shown us who they are game in and game out, that this is probably one of the worst passing defenses in the entire country. They're the worst in the Big Ten right now by far. And I don't know how it's going to get better. And that's what, before we move on to the next sport, I want to talk about this. You look at next year's roster, they're losing a lot of guys, okay? Let's just go down the list on some of them. Ty Felton, Colby McDonald, Roman Hemby, Caden Prather, Dante Trader, Glenn Miller, Ruben Hippolyte, Jordan Phillips might leave. A lot of production that's leaving. You'd have to imagine Loxley's going to hit the portal, but there's a ton of roster turnover here with some of your best players. And I get Malik's coming in, and I get these guys will get older, so I'm not saying all is lost. They are really, really going to have to hit big in the portal, I think, this offseason to put together a season that I think reignites the momentum they'd created, over the past couple of years.
Sam, I wanted to ask you, do you think Billy might be on that list of departures? Because it's now 2 of the past 3 weeks he's had subpar games against subpar Big Ten opponents. Minnesota, 54% completion percentage, 2 picks to no interceptions. Similar completion percentage against Northwestern. Again, had 1 pick to no touchdowns. Can you see Billy not returning too and transferring and having Malik start?
Oh, man. I would say no right now. I think Loxley loves Edwards. I think Billy's played perfectly fine this season. What I don't want to shoot down the possibility. I don't think it would be Maryland's doing, though. I think the more likely scenario is Edwards kind of sees the writing on the wall. Maybe he wasn't happy with how this season ended. And this is just speculation. I have no idea how Billy's feeling. It seems like he's been fine, but doesn't like what it's been like. He wants maybe to just kind of start anew. I could see that happening, but I just don't think there's any way. And MJ Morris looked good in backup relief. Granted, 3rd and 4th stringers he's playing against, but looked very solid. So maybe he overtakes Edwards, and that's the guy, right? But I just cannot imagine this. I know will not happen. Mike Locksley will not go into next season with with Malik Washington as the only realistic potential starter. He's not going to bank a huge season, next year on a true freshman. It doesn't happen in college football. It won't happen with Locksley. He's going to want to have a veteran body in the room, whether that's MJ or Billy. But I definitely could see it. I wouldn't predict it right now. It's a good question though, Mike. It'll be interesting to see over the coming months.
He does have a brother coaching at Richmond.
Yeah, but Billy Edwards is better than Richmond.
His brother also used to coach here, so I mean, no, it's definitely an interesting question. So maybe he would get poached, but I think we talked about it a couple episodes ago. Billy Edwards is not even close to the biggest issue on this team, and in fact, he's definitely one of the positives. I mean, some of the plays he made in that USC game were a big reason they won. I mean, yeah, Minnesota game, first quarter, he didn't necessarily lose them that game, but he did not help. But in terms of the overall look at the team and evaluation, I would have a hard time saying Billy leave, but it's also super possible. Cam Edge just left, and some are saying he got it at the right time just before this game because his lasting legacy will be winning that USC game. But I don't know. It's just tough to know. And if you look at the rest of the schedule, Maryland has to win Rutgers and Iowa to make a bowl game because Oregon and Penn State are pretty much out of the question. But Maryland's pretty lucky that they got Oregon after the bye week because statistically they were not going to win that game anyway. So I don't know. Mike, I mean, Sam, I wanted to mention one thing. You actually had more rushing yards on the field after the game than Maryland had in the first quarter. So talk us through your new segment you started after the game.
Yeah. The segment's one thing, but the rushing game for Maryland is abysmal. I mean, it is just so bad. I don't understand why and then what I don't get is that 4th down and 1, Brendan, that you're talking about, right? Or the 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, the first possession of the game. So 3rd and 1, they go with a slant pass to Prather, which fine. You want to maybe try to stretch the defense out, whatever. You know that your entire identity this season has been how bad the offensive line is in running the ball. So on 4th and 1, you decide to go out of the shotgun, inside zone, no window dressing, no creativity, just power football basically. But the problem is if you're Maryland, you don't have any power. They didn't get under center and run with their 6'4" quarterback who's 225 plus. They decided to just try to outman Minnesota basically, and that just it didn't work. So I will say that if I was on the field there for the 100 yards, my bones probably would have been shattered. But yeah, I mean, running across the field, it felt pretty unique, maybe compared to what the Terps were doing.
The folks on Twitter surely loved it. You guys should go check it out if you haven't seen it. Sam summed up the game in like a minute with a little bit of credit to Mike, who's been doing that for a while. But talk about the rushing game. That play just makes absolutely no sense. I know Locke said after the game, like, we don't have the offensive line. We're still maturing, whatever, 4 games to go, whatever. But then why not just run the play where you have Billy Edwards under center? That doesn't take any, I mean, that takes, I'm not a goal line offense expert, but that shouldn't take that much expertise from the offensive line because you have other people behind him helping him get the yard instead of, running 2 plays, a passing play and out of shotgun that, I don't know the analytics on that, but they cannot be that good. Passing on 3rd and 1, I feel like analytically cannot be the right decision, especially where they are on the field because you want to cut it in half or I don't know. You have to think running the ball twice. That makes the most sense. Maryland did not lose that game because they didn't get a first down on the 4th possession of the first quarter. But the game would be very different if they had.
It set everything off on just like on the wrong foot completely. And what I don't understand is this team continuously, I think, not lies to itself, but I mean, guys, let's just read the starting offensive line's grades from PFF on Saturday. Alan Haran had a 66 grade, best on the team. But after that, Marcus Dumerville
66 was the best?
Yeah, 59, 58, 56, and 55.
Could you do me a favor and read the equivalent stat for Minnesota's offensive line?
Yeah. Oh, and Andre Roy had a 48 grade. The Gophers, meanwhile, a lot of high grades: 80, 74, 74, 73, 70. Max Brosmer had a 93.3 grade. So it's another disheartening loss. It's the 14th straight season Maryland's allowed 40 points or more. It's the worst loss to a ranked opponent or most points they've given up to a non-ranked opponent since 2019. It just feels like, and we can move off football because we've been talking about it, but it feels like this year, just to sum everything up, Mike, if you took 2024, it's like a flashback to Loxley's first year. Now, I get like a mini step back, right? Like, that's valid. Like, they lost players. 6-6, 7-5, I think fans wouldn't be happy, but they wouldn't be, up in arms. But you're looking at maybe a 4-8 season, 5-7, and it's wins over the USC win, great, but Villanova and UConn and Virginia, it just feels like they've gone backwards this year. Not the program, but just this team has gone backwards.
Just the way they've lost some of these games, getting their hearts ripped out at the end by Michigan State, then just getting absolutely steamrolled by Minnesota. Just the way that they've lost some of these games is just very disheartening.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's the way they lose football games. The non-competitive nature on a Friday night game against Northwest. There's stuff like that. It's just the way they lose games is like, it's just...
It's bad.
It's bad. I mean, to sum it up, it's bad.
It's disheartening too, and it's disheartening for as we move off one poor performance to another. The soccer team, tough loss, probably one of their first kind of surprises, I guess, this season. Lost to Michigan. Talk to us through that game, and then coming up, they got a couple big ones: Rutgers, and then Ohio State, who's near the top of the conference.
Yeah, I mean, this team hadn't lost since before school started. They hadn't lost since August. And the biggest difference in the game against Michigan was Leon Kuhl. He'd been the penalty taker all season. He hadn't missed. He'd been perfect. 5 minutes into the game against Michigan, Maryland gets a penalty. Kuhl's obviously out. He's not playing. No one knows when he's going to return, but he's likely out for a good bit, if not the rest of the season. Colin Griffith, who did not play the full game earlier in the week against UCLA because of some rust, he was back. He took the penalty kick, took a pretty weak attempt, and missed. So now you go from Maryland, who'd been perfect on penalty kicks all year. Leon Kuhl had been stud midfielder. Now not having that, Maryland struggled offensively in that game. Michigan scored a little bit later in the first half, making it a 1-0 game, and then later 2-0, and then they held on to the lead. So, at some point this team was going to lose, and I'm sure they would have preferred to lose now in the tournament. This helps them move forward and get right. But the issue is, without Leon Kuhl, it's going to be very difficult for this team to have offensive success. And, that's what we thought at the beginning of the season, and they stepped up and did it. So most likely a next man up mentality. Saddam Mazareka has been brilliant in the past 4 or 5 games. So he has to step up, but you don't really know. So looking forward at the schedule, Rutgers on Tuesday, that'll come out after this episode will come out after that game has been played. Rutgers is the worst team in the Big Ten. Maryland really needs 3 points there. And then Ohio State will likely be the game that decides who will win the regular season Big Ten men's soccer title. If Maryland loses to Rutgers, the path gets much harder. Indiana also has a strong chance, but there's a good chance that game on Sunday is going to be the winner is going to take it. Maryland controlled their own destiny before the Michigan game, but it's going to be tough to beat Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country. Maryland was ranked number 2 at the time of this recording. They're likely going to slip with the loss to Michigan. So we'll have to see. That game is going to be super interesting. And if I had to predict now, I would say with the lack of offensive power that Maryland has shown in the past couple of games, Ohio State will take it. But, it's opportunity to win a conference title. You never know what's going to happen.
What's the update with Kuhl? I know he obviously didn't play, but has there been anything new come out about him?
There has been no official reporting from the team. He did post on Instagram at the end of last week on a story that he was in a boot, but there's been no official word from the team. So like he got carted off when he did get injured against UCLA. There was no specific report on what happened there. So at this time, we don't really know, but signs are not good.
I think, if Kuhl's missing, I think you're underestimating Indiana a little bit too. They're actually at the top of the conference right now. I think they have 20 points. They just had a bad non-con, but for the Big Ten, I think it's going to come down right to that. Obviously, like you said, that game, but also, Indiana won last year. So they get Northwestern, who's one of, if not the worst team in the Big Ten. So if they win that, they'll be set up right there at the top of the conference. So Maryland would probably, they have to win out if they'd want to win the Big Ten, and that's going to have to come down to beating Ohio State. So that'll be a super fascinating game, probably the most important fall game that we've had so far.
Oh, for sure. But
any team.
Just to point one thing out, Ohio State will be in the same position as Maryland, assuming Maryland gets those 3 points against Rutgers. The winner of that game will take the Big Ten. Indiana could tie them for it, but Maryland will still have a shot at the title.
Definitely. Moving off soccer, we head into the field hockey team. We'll start with them. They had a 1-1 week, lost to Princeton, beat Richmond. Friday's the last game of the upcoming season. Mike, Terps don't really have a chance at winning the Big Ten, but they can enter as a second seed. Take us through the scenarios, and as they head into tournament play, what are you watching? What are you looking out for Missy Mahark's team?
So it does look like they'll hold on to that 2 seed if everything happens correctly for them. So they do have to play at number 17 Penn State. Penn State hasn't been, a good opponent for them this decade. They're 2-4 since 2020 against the Nittany Lions. But on the flip side, Ohio State is right under them, 1 game behind, but they have to face Northwestern, who is 17-0. So still have to win that game against Penn State to cement that 2 seed. But if they lose, Ohio State probably won't win that Northwestern game either. So they'll head into the Big Ten tournament, which is hosted in College Park this year as a 2 seed most likely.
Does home field advantage play into the tournament at all? Could they beat Northwestern at home? I assume being at home makes you think they'll probably make it to the finals of the Big Ten tournament, but beating Northwestern is just going to be a huge challenge that this team really hasn't done that much in the past three years.
Yeah, we've talked about it on this pod so many times about how Northwestern is just like the giant in the Big Ten. They can't really take down and have struggled to take down in recent years. They have hosted the NCAA tournament in College Park recently. They did fall early last year in the tournament, but a year before that, they won both games and headed to the Final Four after picking up some big time, a pair of 2 wins in College Park for the NCAA tournament. So, history has shown us both sides that it does matter, it doesn't matter. I can tell you that the players probably would prefer to sleep in their own beds rather than be in a hotel for the Big Ten tournament. So I definitely think that plays a little bit of a role in that.
Yeah, we'll break down the bracket next week. And if you're a fan of field hockey, next weekend is the place to be in College Park. Probably 4 or 5 of the top teams in the country will be just nearby. But from one team that is going to be in the Big Ten tournament to one team that's not. Very quickly, I'll touch on women's soccer. Their season ended with a tie to Rutgers. Tie was 1-1. They scored a goal in their final game. I'm not sure if you guys saw that goal, but it was a huge mistake by the Rutgers goalie. Came out between half and the box and kicked it off a Maryland player, and Maryland was able to score. So got the tie. Rutgers is a team that is in the Big Ten tournament, so was able to play a little bit of spoiler there to drop their ranking. But that's all I have to say about women's soccer. We will talk about them when they hire a new head coach. From women's soccer to volleyball, it's been a struggle, not quite as bad as the women's soccer team, but I want to give you some stats. They lost 2 games this weekend on the West Coast, and they've been really struggling to close out sets. So this year in the Big Ten in sets, they're 9-27, meaning they've won 9 and lost 27, which would make sense because they've lost. They've lost 9 games. They've only won 1 set in the last 6 games. Their only Big Ten win is against Rutgers, who has 0 Big Ten wins. So, a team in the Big Ten that I thought would be a little bit more competitive, kind of similar to they have been in the past 2-3 years, and they have the roster to do it, honestly, but they've just not been winning games. They face off against Purdue and Indiana, both at home. Purdue is the 10th best team in the country. Pattern will likely continue there, but Indiana is a game they would love to pick up as they kind of hope to get some wins near the end of the Big Ten season, or the middle of the end of the Big Ten season. I know last year at this time we were talking about, if Maryland could string it together, looking at some of the rankings and some of the RPI and some of the finishes in Big Ten, could they make the NCAA tournament? That is really out of the question for this team this year. And it's the classic thing. Maryland has a really strong performance in out-of-conference play because their competition isn't that high. And then as soon as the Big Ten comes, they have to face so many strong teams. So not a great weekend for volleyball, but they'll hope to retool at home this weekend.
Someone who did retool quickly this past weekend was Brendan in the Picks. His first 3-0 weekend of the year. Did that, let me check the standings real quick. That did not push the needle at all. Brendan is still in last place, but...
Would you like to share why that happened?
What?
Well, that's happened because I had like 4 correct picks before this weekend.
Okay. Well, he's got the formula down. We'll see if he keeps it this weekend. Brendan, do you want to keep it going and start off?
Yes. I would
Can
love
I
to.
just point out that like we're hyping Brendan up here? How about we just hype up the pod? 9-0 this week.
There we go.
9-0.
Is that true? Is that true?
That is true.
Wow. I will have to fact check that one, but that is unbelievable. Well, I mean, maybe that would happen more often if I went 3-0. Nonetheless, here are my picks for this upcoming weekend. Penn State +4 against Ohio State. That is the game of the week for sure. Oklahoma -31.5 against Maine. That is correct, Maine. And then Mississippi State -18.5 against UMass. 2 New England teams are going to take a beating this weekend. And for pick's sake, I'm all here to watch it.
If you want to know why Brendan has such a poor record this season, just look at the types of games that he's picking. One's with Maine, one's with UMass. There's a reason that these picks aren't going his way. Of course, also a 3-0 week from me, leading the standings right now, 17-10 on the season. So if you want to take the Big Mike parlay, I'll post the odds once this episode drops. But we're going to start with USC, favored by 2.5 points at Washington. Then Northwestern, favored by 1 point at Purdue. And then Virginia Tech, favored by 3.5 points at Syracuse. All road teams this week, but I'm feeling good.
Mike, you're hyping yourself up, buddy. Just so you know, there's a train coming behind you, and it's the Sam Jane train. 13-14 after a 3-0 week. We're only 4 games behind Mike, so 1 bad week, and I'm right back in it. I'm going to start it off going against Brendan, which I should probably just do every week. It would make for a guaranteed win.
That's so mean.
I'm going to take Ohio State -4. Drew Aller's status is up in the air, so that gives me enough reason to take the Buckeyes. I like Illinois at home as +3 against Minnesota. I think Minnesota's good. I like the Illini to bounce back at home. And then I'm going to take Texas A&M -2.5 against South Carolina, a game I will be at randomly. So I'm going to take the Aggies to conquer the Gamecocks there. So.
Look at us. We're getting around the college football world in the past couple
weeks.
Was
in CU Boulder.
I know that now 23rd ranked, Mike's favorite team in the whole world.
I would have
Colorado Buffaloes.
A bye week. They didn't have a bye.
It's true. You should pick them. They're not going to lose. Unless they're Maryland, because Maryland is bad after bye weeks. But I really, for 1 second on picks here, I would love for someone on the internet to calculate what the Under the Shell parlay would have done last weekend if you had taken all 9 of our picks. I mean, you could have raked in a big sum of money. Maybe if you do that,
I'm probably guessing that was like
9 is a lot of games, and some of them
that'd be like
$28K
if you bet $10.
Wow.
Especially with if they factored in like the Brendan Weissel factor, like if you added the history of your picks, we get boosted.
It's crazy
odds boost.
Exactly. Well, we'll see if it happens again this week, and I'm sure you can look out for Mike hyping himself up on Twitter. But I'll hype myself up, and let's do a little Terrific Terp. This week's Terrific Terp had a brother who also shined as a basketball star for the Terps. The two overlapped for 1 year in College Park, but were a staple throughout the highs and lows of Maryland basketball. This week's Terrific Terp is Cedric Lewis, who played basketball at Maryland from 1987 to 1991. His brother Derek Lewis played from 1984 to 1988. Those who know the Maryland basketball timeline well will know that they played for Lefty Driesell, Bob Wade, and Gary Williams. Cedric was a star defender, and in the 1991 season, he set the record for single-season block shots as a total and per game with 5.1 per game. He also tied his brother's record with 12 block shots in a single game. 12 block shots in a single game. Now that is pretty much ridiculous. Lewis played his high school basketball at Archbishop Carroll in D.C. before committing to Maryland. He was part of the first few years of the Gary Williams era and was one of the stars who brought momentum and life to a down program. After college basketball, he was undrafted but was determined to make the NBA. After no luck in the draft in 1991, he joined other professional teams in the U.S. in the Continental Basketball Association, a league which no longer exists. This included playing for Grand Rapids Hoops, Albany Patrons, the Lacrosse Catbirds. He bounced around on those teams until 1993, when he went to go play for 2 different teams over in Europe. Finally, in 1996, he got his big chance, and was with the hometown team. He made it on to the Washington Bullets in 1996, but only played in 3 games. After his stint there, he played 1 season with the Omaha Racers before retiring from basketball While Lewis's career as a shot blocker is historic at Maryland, he's also this week's terrific Terp.
And the best honor you can receive, best honor we can receive is by listening to our episode, engaging with us on socials, Apple, YouTube, Twitter, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. Any new apps that Elon Musk has created, we're probably on it. So check us out all over there. Keep listening and have a good rest of your hoop season.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell Podcast. Nobody does it better.